What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Eastern Current. This is another Weekend Warriors episode. So super excited about this. We had a lot of good feedback about the first one, and like I said on the first one, on the first episode of Weekend Warriors, I think it's just such a speaking with people that have to be effective on the little bit of time per week or per month they get to fish, and can be effective and catch fish. I think that's just a great way for us to learn, and see what the kind of the important parts of putting together a trip are, and capitalizing on that time you get to have. So excited about our guest today, but I got a few announcements before that. I've been announcing this on each show, but please go check out the Eastern Current Fishing Facebook group. So you have to be accepted into the group. If you go apply, you'll be accepted. But it's a community for everyone that enjoys listening to this podcast, and watching the videos that we're putting out. Can join up together and talk and share fishing reports and ask questions, and kind of become a community together in which we can we can all hopefully become better fishermen through working together. The other thing is, what was it? I think that was it. I think that was all my announcements. So, we'll go through sponsors real quick. Thinned out a little bit. They are iStrike Fishing is our main co-promoter and sponsor. Just an incredible tackle company out of South Carolina. They've got a lot of cool products that are coming up that I can't talk about yet, that y'all definitely want to stay tuned to hear about those. They're going to be really hitting some niches that we need in the market. Eastern Angling, that's my guide business. Not really a sponsor, but why not plug my guide business while I'm on here? And then AFCO, which is a great clothing company and really good fishing gear for when you're out on the water, whether it's really nice out or really rainy and nasty out. They got the gear you need. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on today's guest, Zakk Kirby, and here he is. What's going on, man?
Hey, thanks for having me on your show, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
excited.
Definitely, man. You catch fish and you got a good reputation, and just
I try
excited to have you
on
on.
both of those.
I've heard a few really bad things about you, but I'm not going to bring them up on the
Yeah, oh yeah,
podcast.
thanks for not saying that in front of everybody.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. But cool. So let's get started with kind of the basic question I start all these out with is, like, tell me your story. Like, how'd you get into fishing, and how'd you end up here in Wilmington? Are you from Wilmington?
I am
Okay.
not. So my dad was in the military, so I was kind of bouncing around a lot. Started pretty much California for a while, and I fished a little bit there when I was like real
Okay.
little. Just freshwater stuff, nothing cool. And
Hey, fresh.
like
Watch your mouth.
little,
Freshwater's
I'm
cool.
not saying that like that. I mean, like, little pond brim and stuff on
Right.
like hand lines, like with the neighborhood kids, not actually like, going at it. But then we moved to Guam for a couple of years. I
Right
talk
on.
about Guam a lot because in my head it's like I was little and it was like this magical place that it's like unobtainable for me to get back there without dropping like $4,000 on plane tickets. But I remember it a lot. It was beautiful, tons of fish, like everything. It's on a volcano like most islands are, and it's just huge drop offs, like tons of reef life.
Yeah.
And that kind of got me like, I always wanted to fish like the locals there because they would go out and they'd catch bonefish, and then they'd go out a little bit on little boats and catch mahi and like dogfish, tuna and stuff. And I
God,
was
that's
just
so
baffled
cool.
because they would just hit the shore on these boats and like, unload it right there on the beach and like start cooking it. And they invite everyone over to their like little barbecue, and it was just a really good time. And I remember just like being happy being at the beach. So then I moved to Raleigh. My dad got a job there, um, and we were there for a bit. And I always like pond hopped, really tossing anything that a bass would pick up or a catfish, and caught some pretty good catfish and bass. Got excited, kept the passion for fishing alive. Then I got my first kayak, and I kept kayaking just to get the places I couldn't. And my family doesn't fish too much, so I didn't have that
Right.
opportunity, to go out on, with them and stuff. So it was kind of like my own thing, and I made a lot of friends doing that. But I always missed the beach,
Yeah.
and so um, I went to school at UNCW when I had the opportunity. I saved up enough money to go to school there because I wanted to be near the ocean. and I brought my kayak and then just kept hammering what I could until I learned what I was doing.
That's
And
awesome.
it took a while, but I got some stuff I feel like is a little dialed in now. So
Heck yeah. Hey,
it's kind of
can you hear me?
yeah.
Okay, so I can't hear myself in my headphones.
Okay, yeah, you're
Okay,
coming
cool,
across
cool.
good.
Sorry, guys, everyone that's listening for that. I was getting nervous that I couldn't be heard. But sweet, we're gonna keep on rocking. But that's super cool. So growing up in Guam, um, what kind of fish? Was it mostly saltwater stuff that you were seeing go on there fishing wise? Okay.
Yeah, it was the island's 7 miles
Oh
wide at
yeah,
its widest point, so
yeah. So that's
you're
my
never
that's
you're
my
never far
ignorance
away. You're never far away from the ocean.
for sure.
So yeah, it was a big part of every day there. We'd go to the beach pretty much every other day.
Right on, man. And how? What'd you say? You might have already said this. How old were you when you moved?
I was young. I was 8 to 10 years old. So
Dang,
very short time in my life, but very memorable.
that's super cool.
My dad dove a lot there,
Yeah.
so he would shore dive and go out on these other dives. But when he shore dive, I would snorkel around the shallows while he would do that. My mom would be on the beach watching us, and it was a good time. So,
Right on. Were there much for flats there?
not
Okay.
particularly. Right off the beach for the first like 30, 40 yards, it'd be like 2 foot deep, and then it would drop off to like 15.
Okay.
Then go out for a couple hundred yards at like 80, and then it would just drop down to 1,500,
God, that's crazy.
2,000 feet. Yeah.
That's crazy. I'm sure that offshore pelagic fishing was pretty. I guess you can't even
Yeah.
call it offshore when you're that close to the
The
beach.
world record dogfish tuna, I don't know if it still stands, but it was caught from a kayak in Guam.
That's awesome. Those
The
are
the
some
YouTube
badass
video
fish.
is yeah, the YouTube video is insane. Like this guy's just wearing himself out fighting this. I think it's like 176 pound dogfish, yeah, dogtooth tuna, and it's just insane.
It's crazy. Like I talk our mutual friend Elias. I talk with him sometimes about this, or I talked with him the other day about this. Um, the fact of like being able to fight a big fish from a kayak. It's like it's at a certain point. It's like they're going to be
Yeah.
pulling the
Hmm.
kayak, and if you need to apply more resistance, I guess if you have pedals, you back pedal against him. But
Yeah. My current setup, I don't have back pedals on it, so
gotcha.
I'm getting pulled with it. So big reds. If I foul hooked a cow nose ray once, and
Oh
it towed
gosh.
me around for probably an hour and a half before I even realized it. Before I realized it was a cow nose ray, like I was just getting tugged. I thought I was like in this awesome
This is a world record
in
redfish.
yeah. I was like, man, I'm in this like inshore bull redfish in like the middle of summer. Like, what is it doing here in 3 foot of water?
I wish we
But
could go back in time and make stingrays and other rays like desirable. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Because I'm like, I wish my clients would only be like, "Oh, this stingray is awesome," when you're bait
yeah,
fishing, or throw those. I know
that's
you're not. I
funny.
know they're not cobia, but throw those cow nose rays and hook one. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
but
no,
even
I
myself, I
had
can't. I still think they're kind of lame. So,
that's one of the when I first moved to Wilmington, and that was like one of the first things, like late summer, right off the Wrightsville Beach boat ramp.
yeah.
I would just cast out like chunks of bluefish, and I caught probably 3 rays. Each one was over 100 pounds,
Wow.
and they wouldn't suck to the bottom. They would just fight, and I fought one for like an hour and a half. And I thought it was cool because I wasn't catching anything else at the time,
Yeah.
so I was like having a good time.
Hey, a
But
bent rod's a bent
yeah,
rod.
yeah, it was fun.
Well, cool.
Now, if I hook into one, I'm like, ugh.
So let's
But
talk about your experience here. Like as you started to fish, when did you say you moved to North Carolina to Wilmington?
Wilmington was, I think, 2014,
2014.
13. I'm not sure.
Okay. Was that the start of like your serious saltwater fishing? Like when
Yeah,
it
I
was?
would say I forgot to mention we lived in like kind of near Topsail
Okay,
for a
sweet.
little bit too before we moved to Raleigh from Guam. And so I did get exposed to it a little bit there, mostly like pier fishing,
Yeah.
gotcha plug in for bluefish and stuff. And but I was still young, like 12. So yeah, got serious once I moved to Wilmington
Gotcha.
and was able to devote some time to it.
Definitely. So 2014 is when you showed up here in Wilmington and got after it. What did you know when you were moving here? Like, all right, I'm going to really get into fishing now that I'm going to be here.
That was the reason.
That was the reason. Okay,
like
sweet.
UNCW was, a great school for me, but that was the reason.
Yeah.
I was like, I got to go back to the beach. That's where I need to be.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. That's awesome, man. What year did you graduate at UNCW?
It was last year.
Last year.
Yeah.
Sweet. Right on.
Last year.
That's awesome. So, all right, well, let's talk a little bit about, I know we kind of did pre-show, talked about some of the stuff we wanted to hit, but some of the stuff you were saying really stood out to me. And I think the big one for so many people when it comes to, I'm going to switch over to my camera, when it comes to, being a weekend warrior and only having a little bit of time to fish is you have a lot of time to plan. You've got a lot of time to plan out your process, the days you're going to go fish and also, how you're going to go about that day. The tackle and stuff. So there's no reason if you're not on the water every day, but you got the evenings and you're stoked and you want to really produce when you're on the water to not plan and prepare really well. So what is I'm just rambling over here. What is your planning process as far as, making sure that you're going to be the most productive when you're on the water?
Well, normally it's like, like you said, like you have so much time to plan and you're trying to like stay motivated. You're listening to podcasts and watching videos like throughout the week to keep the stoke up.
Right.
And I start with the weather. I look at the weather and I'm like, what's going on? And then I'm like, oh, if it's good, I'm like, okay, I need to make a plan. If it's going to be terrible, I'm like, whatever. It's just going to be, errand weekend or something.
Right.
Just doing boring stuff. And then, I start to look at like, all right, time of year, what's the water temperature, tides, like, well, how is it going to look for those days or like what little time period I have. So weather, thinking about like my time frame, like what time I have available. And then I look at like what I would like to catch. And then I compare that to like what I have the opportunity to catch, like what time of year it is, what's running, what are people saying. And a lot of that I get from like talking to people, but like the internet is such a resource. So I'll pull up like old fishing articles from like Carolina Sportsman, Fisherman Post, fishing reports are awesome for that. Looking at NC Angler, like recent catches, people want to show off what they caught. Even like going to Instagram and just like hashtag saltwater fishing at Wrightsville Beach.
Yeah.
Like people will post like recent photos and you'll be able to see like, oh man, I don't know this guy, but he just, let me know where he's fishing. Yeah. And where what's running. So stuff like that, just trying to get as much information as possible to make like a educated guess of like where you're going to be the most productive.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's so important. So like once I figure out like what I want to do and like what I think is going to be productive, that's when I'm like, okay, where can I launch my kayak to be as close to that area as possible? And that's where like Google Earth comes into play a lot. Yeah. Like, normal boat ramps are great. There's a lot of public kayak ramps, but with the kayak, you can also just like toss it in the water anywhere as long as you can drag it to the edge.
Right.
So as long as you're not going through like someone's yard, because that's a bad idea. So once you like do that and you have like your plan of what you want to do, you have your launch, and you're excited. Like Friday night, you're excited. I always find that I'm way more likely to go if I prep the night before, like load everything up.
Oh yeah.
Like you wake up super early and you're like, oh, I got to lift this, 80-pound kayak onto my car. Like it kind of like, it's such a small thing, but it like, it adds up.
Everything feels huge when you're laying in bed in the morning early.
Yeah, you're just like, oh, it's cold. My kayak's heavy. Like, no. So I always try to load up the night before. And then, like, my biggest problem is, like, I love gear. Like, I love new gear. I love trying new stuff. But with the kayak, like, you're limited on room and you're limited on, like, what you can do out there because you don't have, like, a working space. So I always try to keep it simple. Like, unless I know it's going to be like a completely new area,
okay,
I won't bring my fish finder. Like I won't bring more than 2 rods. And everything I bring is like multi-purpose. Like a lot of my rods are mediums. They're not like lights or ultralights or medium lights because I do use medium light a lot. But you want it to be dual purpose, like
as versatile as possible.
Yeah, depending on what's happening. and that's what I use braid, and I usually stick around 20.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go up to 30 because it's still like I think 8 pound diameter. Like you can still cast it just as far as you want. Um, but depending on what you're fishing, you don't want to be outgunned, but you also don't want to feel like you're swinging a Senator 4-aught at a tiny little fish.
Exactly.
So I keep it pretty versatile with my gear, like trying to dual purpose everything. And when I get to my area that I want to fish, and I think this is like what I want to do, I always start small with my lure, and I always start slow. And I kind of just work an area like that. Like I know a lot of people, they got their search baits,
Yeah.
and they want to like search for fish. And I guess with a kayak, like you can't move as much. So whatever area you're going to be in, you better make it work.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of work to get out of it. So I fish slow and small, and then if things are happening, I kind of move up from there to like larger profiles and faster moving baits. Unless I just know it's going to be, awesome, and I'll start tossing 5-inch swim baits and stuff.
Definitely. I think that a kayak too is such a great way to learn a spot. Like I never fish off a kayak, but I went and kayak fished with a buddy the other day. And, in this area where I would have typically, spent very little time, I spent the whole day on this one shoreline.
Yeah.
And caught a bunch of fish because I was forced to slow down and pick it apart. And where normally like I run into a spot, and if I'm not seeing what I want to see, I'm running out of there real quick instead of powering through it. And there's benefits to both, but slowing down and picking an area apart and learning it well, I think is key. But then there's that fine line of knowing when, like, all right, this spot's burnt. I need to move on and go to the next thing. Do you kind of?
And that's when it's tough because you feel like if you leave, it's tidal areas, so everyth's dependent on the tide. So it's like if you leave at the wrong time, you're out. But if you leave at the right time, because you're kind of your area of movement is much smaller.
Yeah.
So.
Well, what would you say your favorite tide is for fishing? Like if you had to just pick one tide overall to target like, inshore fish.
The last half of falling tide
is
always the most productive for me for like reds, flounder, and trout.
Okay.
For sheep's head and stuff and black drum, I like high tide.
Yeah.
I just find like the areas I fish, they kind of congregate on because I like to get them in a little bit of deeper water.
For sure.
Mostly near like bulkheads and rocks and stuff. But trout and flounder and redfish, the last half of falling tides, pretty much where I would say I'd have most of my luck. And I think a lot of that too is because there's less water. So there's, fish in less water. It's easier to pick apart and find them because they're going to be on, there's less water for them to be in.
Correct.
So,
yeah.
And they're going to be moving. They're going to be following the bait. They're going to be moving out of the shallow spots they couldn't get to earlier in like the high tide, and then they're going to be following them out to the deeper waters, which are easier to post up in a kayak on a grass bank and just cast into the little eddy near the current and pick it apart and find stuff like that. So
I think that's a great way to look at it. I mean, it's there's so many different scenarios at different tides that play out, but that low tide, I always say, well, it really depends on the time of year, but if I'm a lot of the time in the summer, I'm fishing down in the Cape Fear River, and and I'm doing a lot of sight fishing. So the last 2 hours of the fall, first 2 hours of the rise, everything's just more concentrated, and the bait can't be up in the grass. Everything's out exposed. That's when stuff's happening. High tide, except for the fish that like you were saying, the black drum and the sheep's head that are feeding on maybe stuff that's not mobile. That high tide is effective for them. But yeah, I'm totally with you. I'm pretty much just saying that I agree. But so let's go on to this. We had some more questions written down here. When you're on the water, how do you adjust? Like if you need to be flexible. So like we were saying, like with a kayak, you don't have a ton of range, but if you're in an area and it's not working, like what do you do? I know you were mentioning you bring a couple different rods, or you bring rods that are kind of a medium rod so you can go across the board and fish for whatever. But what are some other tactics you use to be a little more versatile when maybe it's not going the way you're planning?
It really comes down to two things for me. One is like the spots I choose to fish, and the other one is the gear I bring.
Okay.
So with the spots I pick, I like to have spots that kind of have like a wide variety of spot like areas to fish. So I like spots that have like fast moving water running out of like tighter areas. I like them to have some holes in the back that you can't really get to easily. You have to go through some skinny water to get to them.
Meaning just some deeper
And
holding areas, holes in the back?
yeah.
Okay.
And then I like them to be closer to like main waterways with like docks
Yeah.
and big oyster beds and stuff on them.
I like it.
Because then, depending on what's going on, it's like I don't have to move that far to get to a different kind of area.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's pretty easy to move around. And then with the gear I bring, it's like I like to bring really light stuff into like some heavier stuff, just depending on the current and what the water's doing and what's around. It's like no matter what, I can try to catch something. So,
Right.
you know, I really like to fish the Ned rigs just because they're so small and everything seems to pick them up. I've actually caught some really big flounder on Ned rigs for some reason. Like, I don't know what's
Really?
going on.
That's
They
cool.
just pick them up.
Are you fishing
But
just a Ned, like a Cinco little worm on the Ned rig? Or
yeah, with the Z-Man, like the thermoplastic styles,
Gotcha.
just because they kind of pop up and float in the
Right.
water, like once they hit the bottom, and I think that helps a lot with the small profile.
Definitely. Have you played around
And
with any of the Ned creature baits that they're making?
yeah, I like the what is it? It's not that far off from the regular Ned rig, but the tickler, the like TRD tickler, it's
That
got
thing's
like
awesome.
the little tentacles coming off the back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I like that. It's pretty cool. And then the crawfish is awesome
Yeah.
because it's like in between like a crawfish and a shrimp almost to me. So because it's so small and it's
Yeah.
got the antennas on it. So I like all those things.
The day
And I like
that,
how
oh sorry,
I like
go
how they
ahead.
hold up.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
no,
like how they hold up. Like it's nice.
they hold up super well. The day that I realized that I didn't have to buy saltwater plastics to fish in saltwater, I was
Yeah.
like, not that it was like I didn't think you could fish other soft plastics, but the range of shapes and patterns and different imitations that they do with freshwater is insane. And in the winter, well, there's kind of applications for both, but all the appendages and a lot of the creature baits and the crawfish that they use in freshwater work great in the saltwater. Lots of little micro movements on a bait that you don't have to, sit there and reel a paddle tail all the way in. You can fish a bait really slow and still have a lot of movement.
Yeah,
Cool.
and another thing I love about the like the wider range of baits is like I use Procure a lot. I'm a big fan of Procure.
Yeah.
And some of the ones that have a little bit more like cuts and stuff in it that like bass fishermen use, like they hold Procure really well. And it just helps me like feel more confident in what I'm tossing out there.
Definitely. I like I like your answer there for how to be more versatile. And a lot of times I feel like I need to apply that to myself. At guiding, I get so sucked in onto like a game plan. And the other problem too is a lot of clients call in and they're like, I want to go fly fish for redfish, or I want to go, catch bull redfish on the jetty, or they have a very set idea of what they want to do, which is great. But the versatility as a weekend warrior I think is huge, and that kind of leads me in to this next segment of what we were talking about pre-show, is like, how does the time of year dictate what you're going to fish for it and spend your time targeting?
So took years to figure it out, like putting everything together, like what was going to work for me, plus with what I enjoy and what's easy to target, like doesn't take that much time to figure out. And I kind of built myself like a little calendar.
Okay.
I haven't really written it out like fully, but starting in the spring, if they show up, I really like to target the chopper bluefish. Catching a 15-pound bluefish in a foot and a half of water on a kayak it's an experience. I hooked one on one of the bigger Elias shads, and I just started getting towed around this little creek. And it's crazy how well a bluefish can pull you in between the oyster beds rather than straight through them.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing.
That is amazing.
It's like they know where they're going. And so I was fighting one of them, and then all of a sudden the line went like kind of slack and then picked up again. And when I finally got the fish in, half of its head had been like a fist-sized hole had been ripped out of it by another bluefish.
Oh my gosh.
And it was just insane.
They're vicious.
The picture I got, it's like terrible quality, but it's just, that fish is just so aggressive in such skinny water.
Uh-huh.
It's fun. So if they show up, last year they weren't very thick, but the 2 years before that I got on them really good with some friends.
Heck yeah.
And it was fun. So then once that happens, and this isn't set in stone. This is kind of just like what I do, like main goal for that time of year. And once that's over and the bluefish kind of thin out, I might get lucky and there'll be some really clean days. I go chase like a near shore bonito on the kayak, like the true Atlantic ones, and that's fun. I'll just catch false albacore all day though. So
yeah,
I don't, that's me. And then I really like to fish for sheep's head after that, kind of like early May. They'll be around.
Do you
pretty
have a
good.
specific rig that you like to fish for sheepshead with? Because it's getting so technical, sheepshead fishing is.
It was just everyone was using either the like Chesapeake Bay like drop shot or the with the big loop or the Carolina rig, but I got sucked into using the jigs now.
Yeah.
And I actually bought a mold and I make them myself now.
Oh, sweet. Right on.
And so it's got it swings, and I can make a couple different sizes. I usually just stick with 1 ounce. I do think the fixed hook sheepshead jigs, like the Insomniac Guide bottom sweeper jigs, and some of the Togfish ones work better.
The fact that it's fixed helps with the hookup ratio?
I think it helps with the hookup ratio.
Okay.
That being said, the biggest sheepshead I ever caught was caught on one of those. And I thought I was hooked into a redfish, and it was a 12-pound sheepshead.
Nice, that's awesome.
And I probably won't catch one that big again in North Carolina, but I was pretty stoked.
Never say never.
Yeah, it could happen. I'm a big fan of those, and I'll bring it up real quick. But I since I have that mold, I can actually make some other stuff.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of like almost like a poison swingtail jig.
Hold it up a little bit higher so we can see it. Oh, sweet, that's awesome.
So it's similar to a lot of the other stuff that's coming out now, but I can make them up to a 1 ounce. Usually I stick to a ½ ounce there.
Explain for people listening what that jig's for. If you couldn't see it, how would you explain it?
Basically, it's a swing hook. It's also known as like a poison jig or something. I think a lot of bass fishermen use it.
Yep.
With like their crawdad jigs and stuff, and it lets the bait swing. And you can get a bigger jig head on it. And basically how I use it is I like to use the Z-Man plastics with it because they have the buoyancy. And I can cast it out into deeper water with high current, and that bait will just flutter on the bottom. And some will come by and pick it up like every time.
Yeah,
if there's something there, it'll pick it up. So that's kind of like how I started making the sheep's head jigs, and I was like, I'm going to try out other hooks with this and see what I can get away with. And so once the sheep's head, I kind of get burnt out on those. I'll fish for redfish. Like the redfish to me is like our bass, like our largemouth bass. Like anytime it's slow, I'm fishing for redfish.
Yeah, I'm with you. They're pretty, fail proof at times, but when they're not, they can kick your butt.
That's typically when I'm trying to fish for them.
Right.
That's when I can't find any of them.
Yeah.
But they're so much fun. Like I love it. It's our state fish. Like I feel very prideful in that because redfish to me is like such a cool fish.
Yeah, they're cool fish.
And then I'll start to flounder fish. They're closed right now, but I still like to catch them and let them go and see how they're doing in like certain areas and stuff.
It's crazy how the with the flounder fishing. Even I'm such a catch and release advocate, but even with the season being closed, it's just so ingrained in us to keep flounder. Like, why fish for flounder if you can't keep them? But they're really fun to target.
The amount of boats that went up on Craigslist when they closed flounder season was insane.
Was it really?
I was like, can't gig no more. Got to get rid of this.
Oh my god,
that was the whole ad. Like I saw tons of them.
Oh man,
and I love flounder to eat. Like it's very good. Like I love it, but I feel like if someone catches a flounder, they want to keep it, and it's just like you said, ingrained.
Yeah, it's so ingrained. It's so hard to get away from.
It is hard to let one go though. Like a really nice one, you're like, dang, that'd be good.
Yeah.
But I usually was releasing most of the fish I caught anyway, so I wasn't too hurt from it.
Yeah.
But I do love to catch them. I think that it's unique how they can be difficult to hook sometimes, you know? And so I find that like as a different challenge, not just finding them, but like getting the hookup ratio good when you find a patch of them. Because I think of them as like crops. Like they're all sitting bottom in a group, and they're all like a foot or two apart, and they're just hanging out.
Yeah.
It's so weird. And they're all different sizes. Like you never, they're different to me. Like it's like a whole nother game.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And yeah, and then I like to fish for black drum, and sheep's head will be mixed in with them, and just fiddler crabs on those jig heads I showed you near bulkheads. Basically, I'd come up to a spot there, and I'd scrape the barnacles, tie off with my kayak, and you can get under docks and next to docks and in bulkheads, and like I've fought some black drum that were 20, 30 pounds in some really tight spots.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome.
they usually break off, but it's pretty cool when you do catch one.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I just did that. That's insane.
That's one of the huge things with a kayak that opens up that sheep's head and black drum fishery crazy. Because, with a boat, one, you can't get to a lot of these spots and get up in where you need to be. And two, it's not quite as painful to hear your kayak scratching a little bit on the oysters as fiberglass.
Absolutely. And that's one thing is like, yeah, I have a Hobie compass now. But when I didn't, and I bought $100 kayak on Craigslist, and I was using that for a while, and I've still yet to catch as much fish in my Hobie as I did in that $100 kayak.
Yeah.
But a lot of it was because I could just let it scrape all day and not worry about it, like just smashing into the. I didn't even have to scrape the barnacles with my paddle because my kayak was just smashing into the bulkheads.
That's good.
Scraping docks, and so that's fun, and you'll catch a lot of redfish doing that too. Like they'll be mixed in with the black drum and sheep's head, and that's fun because each one fights differently, and you're like guessing which one it's going to be.
I love that game.
Yeah, it's fun. And sheep's head fishing to me is like inshore grouper fishing. Like once you're hooked up, like get it away from the rocks, and then you're
Don't
good.
Get broken off.
So, yeah, I have a lot of fun with that. And then like when it's slow on that, like late fall, the flounder, like back to the flounder.
Yeah.
They're just everywhere and they're fun. Especially when you get a big one. Like it's almost like grinding through all the little ones to get to that nice one. Because it's going to be there
right
once you start getting the little ones.
And that nearshore flounder fishing too, like they eat hard inshore, but nearshore, like when the times I bait fished for them out there, and it's something I'm getting more and more into. I mean, they'll lay the rod over like a redfish in the rod holder.
Yeah,
I mean, they'll absolutely smash it. Like you're like this. There's no way this is a flounder, but it is.
It is a flounder. It's weird how once they're out there, like they just become so much more aggressive.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like. They'll hit stuff like a few feet off the bottom, and you'll never know it's a flounder.
Yeah. I've watched some underwater footage of flounder, like chasing baits way up off the bottom and like following them, like halfway up to the boat, which is you never think of that happening. Yeah. And maybe that's not very common, but it happens.
Mm-hmm. I do a lot of free diving around the jetty and stuff, and I've had flounder swim above me. Like
really?
When I'm on the bottom, I like look up and there's a flounder like mid-water column just cruising.
I'd be like, is that a tiny boat up there, or is that a flounder?
Like, what is that? I was like, that's a flounder.
That's
crazy.
Like,
what? So it's pretty funny how like we have set in our minds like what each fish should be doing.
Yeah.
And then they just do the opposite. They don't care.
Definitely. I know that's where it's like you want to like learn as much as you can, but never be set in your ways. Always be open to changing things up and targeting fish in different ways. And as soon as you think you've got something dialed and you know it really well, and you don't, you're like, I don't need to keep trying to learn in this. I'm just going to run this routine. That's when you're shooting yourself in the foot.
And you have to do that if you don't have a lot of time to fish and to devote to it. Like you have to be flexible, or you're just going to be miserable. Every weekend's just going to be, well, that didn't work. It's like you got to be flexible. You got to use your tools. You got to, put in the time beforehand, because you're not going to be able to learn as much from being on the water because you're not able to. So you have to use other people's knowledge from being on the water as best as you can. Definitely. To act as your own.
Definitely. It's that's huge. And one of the big things too, like we were talking about, is definitely, as a weekend warrior, granted, if you want to go out and catch redfish and that's like what you really want to focus on, you can go try that every time you're on the water, or go try trout fishing every time you're on the water. But trying to learn like a variety of different ways to fish and fish to targets is going to really open up, I would say your chances of being successful in the water. So, pick a couple fish this summer and this spring and this winter moving into the summer that you really want to try to learn well. Pick one that maybe you're catching a lot of redfish and stick with that, but maybe devote a lot of time. Be like, I'm going to devote a lot of time to flounder fishing this summer, or I'm going to devote a lot of time to maybe trying to figure out how to catch trout better in the summer, because that's a tough one here, and it's definitely doable, but it requires spending a little bit more time just focusing on that. And then when you've got this arsenal of different types of fish and different ways to target them in your pocket, it's going to be a lot better for you on the Saturdays and Sundays that you get to go out. So my last question for you is this. For people, weekend warriors out there and other anglers that aren't necessarily weekend warriors, what are some of your favorite like tools and resources to help you prepare for a day on the water?
A lot of it is just, you want to read something that's exciting, is going to keep you like entertained throughout the week. So, old fishing articles, I don't care how old it is, I'll read it. And I've learned a lot of great stuff from articles that are 10, 15 years old that still apply today. And a lot of those older, like Carolina Sportsman articles will say like the when and where. And it's like, well, there you go. Like, you just told me what I needed to know.
Yeah.
And the Fisherman's Post fishing reports are amazing resources. I find great. I worked there for a bit.
Right.
So
that's how you and Billy got to know each other, right?
Yeah, sweet. I'm kind of biased, but
you probably wrote the fishing reports. That's why you like them. I'm just kidding. No, they're great. They're really solid.
But they do help a lot with people trying to figure out what's going on. And it's a quick resource, website, paper, whatever. A lot from that. And they go back, almost 15 years now. So there's a lot of built up knowledge. You can go, okay, I'm in Carolina Beach. What was happening this month? What was happening the year after that? And you kind of like, build a bigger picture of what could be going on. And then Google Earth, amazing resource. I like Windfinder and Windy for knowing what's going on with the water temperature, wind, and stuff like that. I was using Swell Info for a while, which was a surfing website that kind of had like the tides, waves, weather, water temperature, and stuff like that. But something happened on their back end, and all their data got messed up, so like wasn't accurate at all. But I love that. It gave me a visual of like what the waves were hitting the beach, so I knew like what I could do that weekend days in advance. Because like as a kayak fisherman, like inshore is amazing, but like I always want to like push it out a little bit, and so if the waves are down, it's like I'm gonna send the kayak as far as I can while being safe, obviously, out there to see what I can like jig off some near shore ledges and stuff.
Definitely.
Other tools is you just gotta like, this is kind of like a thing like to do yourself, but just keep it simple. Every time I try to bring too much stuff, I end up miserable. I tried to go weather turned on me, and I tried to go change of plans. I wanted to catch a striper in the Cape Fear. I ended up snagging my rod for like the 30th time on something in the bottom of the river, and I got kind of upset, and I snapped it on accident trying to get the jig back. And I was pretty upset, but like I was like going to deal with it. And I was texting my girlfriend to let her know, like, I just snapped the rod, and I actually drifted into a tree and snapped another rod there.
Oh my god!
Like minutes after.
That's
so
terrible.
The more stuff you bring, the more stuff you're going to break, the more stuff you're going to drop in the water. You're not going to be happy on a kayak if you're crowded.
Yeah.
You're always going to be second guessing yourself,
and you can very easily become crowded on a kayak. There's not a ton of space.
It's terrible. And I'm such a like big issue of mine is like I'll get snagged, I'll cut the line, and then I'll just grab the next rod and I'll tie on whatever I was using. And it gets to the point, if I have 3 rods, I'll have 3 rods that now don't have anything tied on. And it's like I wish I would have just brought one and just like kept
stuck
retying.
with it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, let's do this one last question then. And you kind of touched on this a little bit, but like on your kayak, you're limited with space. What are your things you're always going to have on your kayak with you?
Always gonna have either a knife or scissors. I like to use these. I just had them out. They're like the paramedic scissors
Oh
you can
yeah.
buy at like army supply stores. They're really good for cutting everything because they're used to cut everything for like first responders.
Yep.
I got my first pair from my dad, who had them in a bag. He was a corpsman in the Navy, so he just had a bunch of cool stuff. So I
Sweet.
really like those. They cut crab good, cut bait good. A lighter because I like to just clean up my knots and stuff with the lighter. It just makes me feel better about
Yeah.
myself. And fish grips because I will every once in a while throw a mirror lure and end up with 3 trebles in my pants with a trout attached.
Yeah.
So fish grips. And other than that, just like the normal stuff, paddle, life jacket.
Yeah.
Like don't forget to pack it because it's a long way back to your house when you forget something and you were that close to the water.
Definitely. Favorite boat snack? That's the last one. I keep coming up with great questions.
Oh man, I honestly I don't know what it is, but I never eat when I'm fishing.
See, I love to eat while I'm fishing.
It's always like I'll start off with a like Monster Energy drink or something like a Rockstar, and I'll just sip on it for a bit, and then I'll switch to water.
Yeah.
But I never eat, and I think what it is because I'm like after a good day of fishing, it's like so nice to just relax and eat a ton of food.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
But I made a change recently, and I'll still kayak fish, but I did just go in on a 19-foot catamaran.
Nice. Heck yeah.
So I made a big leap. So I co-own a 19-foot catamaran now, and we'll see what changes with that.
Right on. Are you talking like a fishing style catamaran?
Yeah, it's a center console. Right now it's set up for fishing and diving. So it's got a big dive ladder in the back. Can't believe it actually happened. Like things worked out. And I'm super stoked. It's big enough I can take the kayak on it though. Like I could fit 2 kayaks on there easily, so there might be like some mother shipping opportunities.
Yeah,
but,
I can already see some kayak fishing at the Frying Pan Tower mother shipping.
Yeah,
yeah,
it'll be fun. So I'm excited about that. I'm still gonna kayak fish though because I love it. There's nothing like getting pulled around by a fish. Your kayak acts as like another drag system almost.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. Like you can just hire them out, just let them tow you around.
That's cool.
So I'm excited about everything.
Yeah, that's exciting, man. Don't get rid of the kayak though, because now I'm sitting here thinking like, should I buy a kayak? Like I really like kayak fishing. Will I use it? If I told my wife I was even debating like wanting to maybe get a kayak, she would be like, "No, you shut your mouth."
Nice. Yeah.
But I'm afraid I just wouldn't use it enough. Like this time of year, doing some freshwater stuff, I think I would, but it's so hard to not just take my skiff when I'm saltwater fishing. So
absolutely, especially because your skiff can get pretty shallow.
Yeah, I can get a lot of places.
Worried about that.
It can get a lot
but
of places.
If you follow Jimmy Buffett of all people on Instagram,
yep.
He's got tons of boats, tons of money. He's got a seaplane or something.
Yeah.
And he will fly fish from his paddleboard constantly.
Really? That's super cool.
There's got to be something.
I don't follow him. You said on Instagram? I don't follow. I need to follow him on Instagram.
It's insane like how much it's just fishing. Like it's just like following someone's fishing Instagram.
Yeah.
Of all people.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to wrap it up here, but we had so much good information. It's crazy how quickly an hour. Well, we're doing them a little bit shorter, I guess, but we've been talking for 45 minutes, which is just nuts. I mean, it's like it flies by.
Yeah, because I can just keep talking. So
I can too.
We should have set a timer. Like, all right, you're done.
No, I'm excited. I like just letting it go to where it goes, but we kind of hit the main points there, and I really like your view and your knowledge, man. There's a lot to learn from you. So if people want to, pick your brain a little bit more, maybe see if y'all would be compatible fishing buddies, like what would be a good way for them to reach out to you?
Probably just Instagram.
Cool.
That seems to be, the platform I use mostly.
Yeah.
It's a little easier to weed through everything on Instagram than it is on like Facebook and stuff.
Definitely. So his Instagram, you guys, if you're watching the video, you can see it here at the bottom of the screen, Zakk of all trades. But if you're listening, it's Zakk, which is ZAKK, and then it's underscore of, which is OV, and then underscore all, and then underscore trades. So Zakk of all trades, with double K's in the Zakk. I like that.
Yeah, there. Real quick, there's another Zakk with 2 K's in North Carolina, and he's a catfishing guide.
Oh, sweet.
And we were born the same year, I think, and it's crazy. He caught the state record blue catfish,
Up
and then
there in Lake Gaston? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
within
Okay.
24 hours, he beat his own record, and everyone thought it was me
Really?
for like a week. Like I was getting so many calls, so many people like messaging me, and I was like, "That's not me," because they just associate Zakk with 2Ks. He likes fishing. That's got to be him. So
That's incredible.
yeah,
I
pretty
got to share
funny.
this story too. I think it's time for me to confess this because that just reminded me of it. Did you take credit for it at all ever?
No,
Okay.
I wish.
Okay. So you said you like to surf, right?
Oh,
Or no,
I
you were
dive.
dive. You were
Yeah.
saying surf it, like paddling through the surf, but then I was like, oh wait, you were talking about paddling his kayak through the surf.
I've tried to surf. I'm not. No, I'm not good.
So I'm not good anymore either, but I used to surf a lot in college, and I went up to the Outer Banks one time during a big swell in the. It was like dead of winter. It was pretty freaking cold. And there's this professional surfer up there named Jesse Hines. He runs a little ice cream or a little frozen yogurt shop up in Nags Head. Super cool dude, really down to earth. And we both had the same brand surfboard, but like they were both painted the same way. So it was
Oh,
black at the bottom and green at the top. And we're out surfing in Frisco, which is the kind of lower Outer Banks,
yeah.
and it was like really big. I was sitting out there for a long time before I was paddling into a wave. I think I caught like 4 waves in 6 hours. I was just it's a little
Dang.
a little beyond my ability, and so Jesse catches this wave and gets this huge barrel, like super super long barrel. And I get to the beach and I'm walking on the beach and these like three dudes are walking. They're like, "Oh man, we saw that barrel you got earlier. That was awesome." And I was like, "Thanks, guys," and just kept walking and like totally took credit for his big
Oh,
barrel.
that's
But
great.
but yeah, your story. I haven't thought of that story in forever, and yours reminded me of it. Not fishing worthy at all, but it was time for me to confess that. So, but yeah,
That's
man. Well,
awesome.
thanks so much for coming on. We'll have to get together and do some
Yeah, no
fishing
worries.
sometime. If I do pull the
That'll be
trigger on a
fun.
kayak, I'll have to pick your brain a little bit.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, man, for sure. Well, thanks, guys.
Definitely.
We're gonna close it out here. Like I said, remember to go check out the Facebook group, Eastern Current Fishing. We're gonna build a little community there. But yeah, this weekend Warrior Series is super fun. We're gonna keep them coming at you. I've got I said I was gonna do them every other week. We might have them every week. It might be every other week. So I'm enjoying recording these, and talking with different guys about their strategies as a weekend warrior. So stay tuned, and we will see you in the next episode. Later, y'all.